There ain't no cameras, ain't no microphones, nothing. Any cops you see gonna be down right on the perimeter, just to make sure there's no violence. And you watch. You see if it don't work out the way I say.
Well, nothing personal against you, Chief, but what happens if we buck?
You remember the carrot, right? Well, you choose to stick instead. You gonna feel that stick like you ain't never felt before.
Alex Cottrell and Toby Huntingford present Caught on the Wire. This podcast is an episode-by-episode analysis of HBO's widely acclaimed TV series about the city of Baltimore, its people, and its many problems. Find more information about the show and all the episodes online at caughtonthewire.wordpress.com.
Hello, welcome back to Caught on the Wire. It's Season 3, Episode 5, Straight and True. How have you been, Toby?
I have been very well. Very pleased to see that Hamsterdam is finally in action. We've got a few hoppers running around selling their wares in the open. So, but, I mean, away from the wire, things have also been good. So, just enjoying work and the summer coming along and the evenings getting nice and long.
Oh, not today, though. It's been horrible.
Has it been
today.
terrible? Oh, right.
You?
I mean...
it's been horrible here.
The sun always shines over London, even if it's through the clouds.
It's just that light pollution.
Yeah. No, it's been nice today. It's clouded over this evening, but yeah, it's been a beautiful summer's day, practically. Yeah.
You seen the new Game of Thrones? I know we mention it every time.
We mention it every time, and then we have to stop ourselves in our tracks, but I did. I managed to sneak it in last night before I went to bed. All I'll say is Game of Thrones is going downhill a little bit.
You think so?
Yeah, it's so quick. Like, they've just shoved so much into these episodes now. They're really trying to get somewhere quickly, and I feel like their stories are losing out a lot, and the characters as well. They're sort of we're missing a lot of key things. So, obviously we can't go into specifics, but yeah, I'm not too impressed with the last couple of episodes. But everything up until then has been really solid. So, hopefully it will kind of bring itself back onto track. Yeah. What about you, sir?
Yeah, it's definitely making a lot of very quick movements. I think I can understand. Obviously, having never read the books, it's difficult to appreciate, but I think I can see from a book lover's perspective how it must be rushing along a little bit. There are some quite big steps being made, and even though I don't know what's going on in the books, I can feel like massive sections are being left out. So
definitely, yeah.
I think I can feel their pain.
Yeah. So I haven't read the fourth and fifth book, but from what I've heard about them is they're very different. They're very, very character heavy. There's not a lot of action. Therefore, I guess not very televisual. And if they can skip through them as quickly as possible, just brushing the main strokes, then it's probably for the better of everyone. So I guess I'll have to keep faith in them for the moment and see if things get better. But I believe that we're practically at the end of the books now. Like, some of the strands are already beyond where the books have left them. In the current state of George R.R. Martin's writing. So the show is very much kind of racing ahead of the books already, which is quite crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a really good YouTube channel that I've been seeing recently called Alt Shift X. And he does a lot of sort of analysis of Game of Thrones in relation to the books and the TV show. And mainly speculating on fan theories about certain ideas about where the story might go next, who certain characters are, what their intentions might be. He kind of deals with a lot of those fan theories. He talks a little bit more. He kind of puts it in context because obviously, like I said, having not read the books, he's able to put the show in context with the books, and you can see that there are certain places that characters have been that they never actually go to. Or there's important parts in the book that have been missed out. So, yeah, you kind of get a sense of these big steps that they're taking with the show in order to keep it moving along. Because it's so different with TV. You can't kind of afford to meander as much. And I guess in the context of The Wire, even The Wire, when it does meander quite a bit, it's trying to explore a lot of different avenues. It's not making big jumps. It's not got big time dilation going on.
No.
Whereas
no.
The Wire will kind of have big journeys cut out, and it will suddenly go somewhere very far away, and you're left to imagine what might be going on around the rest of the world. Whereas in The Wire, everything feels a little bit more sort of compact. Condensed.
You kind of see the full picture because we jump around so much, and the world isn't quite as vast either, is it? And you feel
like you're never too far away.
No.
Yeah, like you say, Game of Thrones, like, it's a massive world.
Yeah.
It's not trying to capture a city. It's trying to capture like several continents. So.
It is kind of crazy, and there are a lot of different groups in The Wire, but everything's so much more interlinked that you never feel like you're that far from anyone else. Whereas I think particularly with some of the seasons in Game of Thrones, everyone is really up to their own thing. They're trekking through different parts of the country, all ultimately have goals that might align with other people's goals or eventually see them cross paths. But there really is a lot of segregated stuff going on in that show, which makes it feel perhaps a little bit less satisfying in some ways. But I like the way that they're speeding things up, and hopefully that means that we're going to see less of that as the show goes on.
In terms of watching other stuff, I saw a brilliant set of BBC documentaries this week called The Detectives. I don't know if you're familiar with it at all.
I've heard vaguely about it. I think, how is it?
Yeah, it basically looks into it's like the Serious Sexual Offences Unit in Greater Manchester Police. And it kind of looks at several cases that they go through, including a case of a guy who's like close to Jimmy Savile, a guy called Ray Terrett.
Okay, yeah.
But it just looks at how they investigate the case, how they deal with taking it to court, how they deal with collecting evidence. It's a really intimate, very personal look at each case. I never really see police work from that perspective before, so a really well made documentary. And BBC, they really know how to make a good documentary. So I recommend it. It's a 3-parter. It kind of deals with a couple of cases, that a bit of an arc to it. You meet some characters in it. It's very well made, good music, very nicely shot. I recommend it.
Beautiful. We all love a good arc. Us Wireisters. So, okay, yeah, excellent. I know that my do have some friends that are watching that, and it was all dealing with similar cases, right? Maybe sexual offences, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's all like sort of sexual allegations and rapes, sexual assaults, having people having sex with like underage kids and stuff, like pretty dark stuff. So quite harrowing, but if you're in the mood for it, it's very, very, very good, very interesting, very unique perspective.
Sweet, yeah. Have you seen anything else? I went to the cinema this week. I do try and go quite a lot, but recently there hasn't been a lot on. But I did see Mad Max Fury Road this week, which I heard a lot of good stuff about. It's not the sort of film that would stand out to me in a trailer or anything like that. I'm not really an action film guy, but I heard so many good things that I had to go and check it out, and it is an absolutely fantastic film. Would highly recommend it. One of those experiences of a film more than anything else. Echoes of perhaps Avatar and particularly Gravity. It's one of those films where you should go and see it in IMAX, the biggest screen possible. Probably get the 3D going as well. It probably enhances the experience. It doesn't for a lot of movies. But it's one of those visual media moments. And the backstory as well is not too bad. There's some decent characters in there. Nothing too deep, but considering how much action there is in this film, and it's kind of a 2-hour car chase movie, which sounds like it would run out of steam very quickly. They managed to keep it going, and there's just enough character development on the side that you never really find a dull moment with it, and I was very, very impressed. So I'd definitely go and check it out.
All right. From what I've heard, it's like you say, it's just one big action scene, basically.
Yeah, there's
and that there seems to be a certain rise of films like this where it's one long sort of action sequence. John Wick, was it?
Yes,
another film like that recently.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of similar spin.
And the thing about this film though is that a lot of it is physical stunts. There's CGI is used when it's needed to, but not kind of overused to the point where it becomes video game-esque. As I know, particularly the Hobbit trilogy suffered from that a lot, I think. So particularly when you do go and see it on the big screen, it does feel real, and you know, a lot of what's happening is real. It's been properly filmed as a stunt, so that really adds to the experience of an action movie, and it reminds you how fun it can be if it's done well. It's a really good film, and I think that as a sci-fi concept as well, it comes up with a really nice world that's built right from the start. So do go and check it out, guys. It's very, very different to The Wire, but I think has many merits in different places. So
I saw part 3 of The Hobbit recently, actually. A friend of mine had it on Blu-ray, I think it was. So we just kind of watched it on there. Because I haven't actually seen part 2. I saw the first one, and I was a bit kind of nonplussed by the whole thing. So
I saw this.
I didn't really follow it up.
First one, I fell asleep in it for the first hour. Second one was better, I thought. And I thought the stuff with the dragon towards the end of that film was pretty well done with Smaug. Wasn't tempted enough to go and see the third one though. You know, I didn't love the second one. I might go and see it at some point, but yeah, I was never massively hyped up on the Hobbit trilogy. Just a bit of a bloaty film series, isn't it? Really, that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I found like it had a lot of very conflicted characters, and not in a good way. It was kind of difficult to really connect with a lot of what was going on, and they really dug a hole for themselves with all those dwarves. I kind of realised by the third film that they couldn't concentrate on all of them, but I feel like in the first film especially, they really tried to characterise all these dwarves. And when you got 12 of them or however many on screen at one time, you can't take in that many characters at once. You can't explore all of them properly, and as a result it had a very unfinished feel to it, despite how dense it was as a film. And all the CGI just made everything seem a little unnatural. And I thought that one of the Lord of the Rings' greatest strengths was how it took something that was very fantastical and made it seem almost kind of gritty and real. And, you know, so many extras and sets and props. It wasn't, you know, although there was a lot of CGI, a lot of it was still real sets and a lot of extras and very carefully planned out. And The Hobbit was going for a little bit more of a, like you say, almost gamey feel to it. So I don't. That pays off for a certain audience if you're going for that big demographics. Obviously, made them a lot of money, but yeah. I don't know. I didn't really feel the same way about it. I was aware that it was the same universe, and I kind of felt a lot of the same ideas, but I didn't really latch onto it in the same way. I mean, Lord of the Rings is probably my favourite film ever. So
yeah, it's bold, definitely. I've only seen them through once. I think we've spoken about Lord of the Rings before, actually, but there's certainly a better bunch of films, absolutely, and I completely agree that they benefit from their reliance more on physical acting than, you know, backing things up with computer-generated imagery. I think that's very much a product of its time, back when CGI was less a technique used in the industry and probably far more expensive as well than it is now. So that's just a benefit of the time, I guess.
I don't know. It's still 99 Fellowship?
It might have been 2000. I think they were all post millennium, weren't they? 2000.
Was it 2001, 2003, 2005?
It was 1, 2, 3. It was 2001, 2002, 2003. They were released. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a long time ago. That
the same time as the Star Wars prequels.
Yeah,
really.
a little bit before the prequels. I think, you know, special effects haven't really improved since, particularly Star Wars Episode 3. I remember seeing that film, and the visual effects in Star Wars Episode 3 are absolutely fantastic. Not sure if they're overused, but I feel like that we kind of hit a barrier when it came to special effects since then. And they're certainly used.
I don't know. There's still a lot of very impressive stuff going on.
They're certainly used more and more than they used to be.
You look at something like Gravity.
Yeah, that is true.
And that's worlds ahead of something like Star Wars, because it's fantastical, but it's really going for quite heavy on its realism. That's
one of those films that kind of transcends the idea of visual effects, because you can't really tell what is an effect and what isn't. Like it's melded them together so well.
The whole thing is one big effect.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But it looks completely real, as you say, and it's something that Mad Max does very well as well. Like, you know, it's such a frenetic film that if they were to put a few computer touches to it, you really wouldn't notice. You'd still be completely immersed in the reality of the action and the chasing and the adrenaline and the rest of it. So, those films are very good. They certainly do a little bit better than the Franklin Terraces coming down.
Yeah, so let's bring things towards the purpose of this podcast then, and start by toddling over to Listener's Corner, where we've had a couple of emails. The first one we heard from Damon again, who just clarified, because remember last episode I think we mentioned that his father was an extra in the scene with Carcetti in the bar where Terry D'Agostino turns up.
Yeah.
And he clarified that it was his father played Pete Sinopoli.
Okay.
He's the one who passes on the bet. He's the one that doesn't want to join in.
The smart one.
So yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. I was wondering which one it was.
Yeah, very cool.
He also pointed out as well that, I'll quote him here, "Have you guys noticed the actor who plays Nick's public defender is the same actor who plays the guy trying to convince Bunny to come work for Hopkins?" I hadn't noticed that, as it happens.
I'm very impressed with that, to be honest, because that's kind of really in-depth wire trivia that not even me with my level whatever on Quiz Up would be able to recall.
The ultimate metric for wire knowledge.
That's what certainly, that's what I like to, if you are going to make it numeric, that's the way to do it, I reckon. But yeah, that's great. I mean, I don't think I'd ever noticed that in a million rewatches, so nicely done. And if there are any other ones, I'd love to hear them, all the little connections, because I think the email did suggest that there were going to be more as well, where actors are reused for small minor roles.
Getting their money's
yeah.
worth. We also had Dan get in touch as well, which was good. He saying that he just heard the most recent episode and was enjoying it. He had a little chat about the scene in the last episode with McNulty going to his son's science fair, and he has the volcano, and about his kid getting beaten by the guy who made a computer. Dan says, quote, "I did have a bit of a think when you were talking about McNulty's son's volcano being beaten by the computer project in the science competition. It might be stretching it a bit, but there are some possible interpretations there. The unreliable McNulty, the volcano, losing Rhonda to the reliable Daniels, the computer, a metaphor for the Season 3 turf war, i.e. the explosive Avon versus the calculated Marlowe, and perhaps a bit of a callback to Season 2 as well, and the way computers are replacing the workforce." So yeah, a couple of interesting connections there, I think.
Yeah, that really is digging deep. I like that, though. So it's attaches to quite a few of the institutions, and yeah, that's a really nice reading of it. It's one of those things that the calculated versus, I guess it's more of a pragmatism versus the chaos, isn't it? Which is a big thing in The Wire across all the institutions, really. So yeah,
it definitely works for McNulty, because I guess that's one of Elena's major problems, is that he is kind of explosive and unpredictable and could kind of blow at any time and end up going on some massive bender or whatever, and she wants that safety and stability and calculated style of the suit Dennis, is it? Who is obviously a very made man and has got a very set life.
Yeah.
He's probably quite pedestrian and vanilla, but I guess that's what she wants. She wants the safety and security. I think we talked about it before, about getting that stability in one's life. Certainly, a volcano does not represent that.
Yeah, perhaps it represents that the damage has been done. McNulty is the true biological father, and Dennis can come along and bring that stability. But at the end of the day, McNulty has made his mark on his kids, and the volcano is what arrives.
He also talks a little bit about Fargo. I don't know if you've seen Fargo.
I've seen the pilot like twice, or at least half the pilot twice. Yeah, it's a show that looks like it has a lot of potential, but it's kind of a real dense watch. You have to really kind of get your head in the game for it. So I will, when I kind of have the motivation to go through the show. Like
Generation Kill.
Yes, I mean like The Wire as well. I mean both those shows require a lot of mental stamina, I think, and Fargo, I've heard really good stuff about it. I know it's set within the universe of the film, and it's kind of a reimagining of that film. And I know that the Coen brothers are involved in it as well, which is a massive plus. A little bit like David Lynch being involved in the upcoming Twin Peaks, which is I'm looking forward to a lot. But yeah, I will get into it. What does our email say about Fargo?
Well, he mentions that he was hesitant about it at first, and he says, quote, "I do really like the film, but the TV show is tremendous. Definitely recommend checking it out. I also thoroughly enjoyed Les Revenants, a French supernatural drama, which is really interesting. Bit of a slow builder, but the premise is great, and it kind of merges a bit of the quirky small-town vibe of Twin Peaks with the early mysteries of Lost." He also makes a bit of a burn at Lost, saying, "Hopefully it doesn't end up going the way of Lost, which turned into a complete mess in my opinion. I know that show divides people, though. I've actually never really seen Lost, so..."
Yeah, we haven't chatted about Lost yet, have we, on the show? It's one of my most memorable TV shows. I think the show's overall good. I'm quite sympathetic with the way the show went towards the end. I certainly think season 6 took some wrong steps, but up until then it was pretty decent, with seasons 2 and 4 being the highlights. I think my biggest problem with Lost was the way it was produced, and it used this awful music, this really cliched music, in like every single action sequence, that just didn't feel kind of a quality. It didn't make the show feel like it was of a quality. It kind of had there's this HBO style of show that we kind of aspire to, I feel, when we see a lot of TV that feels very premium, very movie-like, and the Lost fell into a lot of traps that made it feel like a real TV show, and that's not to belittle the actual content of the show. The actual mystery and development of the characters and time they spent developing those characters was absolutely fantastic, but it had a few trappings that grated on me all the way through the show. So yeah.
It's funny as well. I mean, I like to think that the music that you're talking about is perhaps on the part of the brief and the part of what producers and directors were asking for, as opposed to the composer, because the music is by Michael Giacchino, who is arguably one of the best composers around at the moment. Obviously, he's been doing a lot of work for J.J. Abrams lately. Did Star Trek and is now doing the new Star Wars, and he's done some amazing soundtracks. So I like to think that it's not Michael Giacchino. It's what he's being asked to do.
Yes, I think.
But you're right that the music is kind of generic, and it adds that very cheap kind of feel to it, I guess. Very hinging on getting a certain rise out of people, getting that emotion, and constantly over-accentuating what's going on, never leaving anything up to the imagination other than all of these mysteries that's going on. And I've not seen a whole lot of the show, but I don't know. I never really saw clips of it and thought, "Oh, this looks like a show I'd really want to watch." It kind of came across as a bit like something like Prison Break or something, which just doesn't really grab you straight off. It just seems very kind of standard American sort of syndicate drama or whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, the shows are set kind of dressed up in that, and as you mentioned before, it's not Giacchino at all that causes problematic music. It's just the way the music is deployed, and it's particularly used to punctuate ad breaks. So not only the music will punctuate it, but also there'll be kind of a compulsion to make every scene before the ad break a real cliffhanger, and particularly when you watch it back on something like Netflix without the ad breaks, it makes all of those moments very jarring. There's this fade to black, and then you instantly come back, and the scene repeats itself and then resolves itself, and it's just such a a limitation of TV that really stands out when you watch it in a binge mode option, and something that shows on HBO never have to worry about. So it's just things like that, that could be considered nitpicking next to the content of the show itself, but something that just runs throughout the whole show and does stick out to me. Yeah.
I think that's all our emails. That's about it for Listener's Corner. Thanks again for getting in touch.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's time to move on to the episode proper.
Indeed. And
about that time.
Yes, let's bring it on. I'm back on the gladly back on the recap. And I've got it down into 19 chapters, which seems to be around the sort of number that we go for these days. And in terms of the major chapters, we have a small Bubbles chapter, a small McNulty chapter, a small Omar chapter, and then we have our wider institutions. So we have politics, which is mainly just Carcetti, to be honest, the homicide department, the Western District, the Barksdale organisation, and the major cases unit. So we're going to have a lot of ground to cover.
Lots of little stuff then.
Yeah, I'm going to...
Or smaller stuff.
Definitely.
Anyway.
I mean, there's a few kind of characters who have their personal journeys or little scenes that don't really fall into any of the other categories. So I'll kick off with Bubbles anyway, as the show does. And it's just a case of Bubbles and Johnny, and they're arguing about the morality of acting as a police informant to make money as opposed to getting out of trouble with the police. Johnny persuades Bubbles to run a short-con with him to make money instead of reporting to Kima. Once Johnny has the money, Bubbles is nowhere to be found. So that's our first scene in the show. Did you think it was a worthy opener? Does it match up to the Season 3 openers we've seen so far?
I think so. I think it says something about the show as a whole. I've been reading Truth Be Told recently. And in the opening part where David Simon is talking about the idea behind the show and how he pitched it and what the overall ideas were involved, he talks about The Wire sort of intentionally being this antithesis to the standard cop show, and to kind of present characters as being the opposites and intentionally bucking the trend regarding what we expect from our characters on television. And I feel like in this scene, to me, maybe it was because I had read that recently, so it had stuck with me. But when I watched it again, it made me feel like Johnny was somehow representing the stereotype junkie whose only real interest is kind of playing it safe to make the money to get the dope. He's not really there to step out. He doesn't really have much moral character, whereas Bubbles is the alternative. He's the antithesis to that idea. And it's almost like it felt like a conversation between The Wire and other sort of cop shows and other shows that tend to present dope fiends as very one-dimensional and only interested in one particular thing, not really of much depth. So it kind of came across like that to me, and I felt like it was a good representation because it also showed the difficulty in that and how it stays true to the moral ambiguity of the show, where although Bubbles to some extent is waxing lyrical about how important it is to try and rise up and not get stuck in this rut where they're just, peddling each day just to get small amounts of money just to get high. But at the same time, he's not beneath going through that swindling of that guy up in the ladder. He's not beneath going through a scam like that to make a bit of extra money. It shows these very conflicted characters. So I thought it was quite a nice opening scene. I thought it said a little bit about the show and its ideas.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really nice reading of Johnny in particular. And I think Johnny also works well here as a demonstration of the power of people like Avon. We always hear the street talks about how no one talks and that there's this code of silence. And we do need characters that live up to those standards. And Johnny certainly makes a good case for that. He makes the climate of fear seem very palatable. And it's not even just out of fear. It's kind of built into the moral fabric of the street that I don't necessarily like Avon. But I'm not going to talk. The police is no joke, and even if the police weren't involved, you get the sense that this is just the way that the street has learned to do things. And it's good to see Bubs on the other side of that, having his morality challenged, and it feels like he's going through a turning point here, and he's now going to go straight, or at least try and build up his own entrepreneurial, bank of money from now on, and the short cons of season 1 are long gone for him. He's just something's switched in him where he's really building up a sympathy for kind of humankind, I guess.
This is the slow rise now for Bubbles,
Yeah.
isn't it? For up until the end of the show, it really is this nice slow rise. He's been very up and down up until this point. But this is the time where we really see Bubbles actively and consistently pursue something better.
Mm.
And it leaves, it only serves really in terms of Johnny to emphasise how much of a sidekick he is, and it just leaves him in the dust, really.
Because I think this is the last time that Bubbles and Johnny actually are together on the show. This parting and the arrival of Hamsterdam gives Johnny a good excuse to descend into heavy drugging and eventual ODing and dying. And I believe Bubbles really does part ways and tries to find a more worthy companion. The streets are certainly lonely without a companion, and Sherrod comes along after not too long. And then, of course, Bubbles does reach his bottom, as Waylon put it in season 1, when he, indirectly kills Sherrod. And then we
season 4, you mean?
This is getting quite ahead, isn't it? But it's kind of the start of that path, as you mentioned. It's the path that it's mainly a growth, but there is a very, very deep hole that he does reach halfway through it. That kind of pushes him towards the actual redemption he finds in season 5. So
yeah, there's like that first rise, the first slow rise. He begins to understand a little bit more, and then, like you say, the big bottom, and then that gives him enough to actually push himself above that threshold and make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really, again, as with a lot of scenes, laying foundations for what we're seeing later on with Bubbles.
It also allows you to appreciate how someone in that situation, in terms of real life, how it can take years to really establish any kind of normality, and even that normality is, just unimaginable for the vast majority of people. So it gives you a real appreciation to what it really takes to rise up from those depths.
Yeah, definitely. Nothing comes easy in this show, and I think it was good seeing some of the more simpler aspects of this scene as well, like the just kind of the presentation of the street. That they really chose a very weedy street just to kind of emphasise the lack of care and attention to this part of the city, and the weeds falling through the cracks. And Johnny seems to be wearing this optimistic palm tree sunset shirt, and Bubs is kind of wearing this darker shirt, perhaps ironically, because that doesn't really match their outlooks. But it is a nice observation, and just weird to see how horrifically Johnny plays the hero as well, right? Really forcing that back rub on the window cleaner, and terrible attempt at refusing the money. So it's still works for him though. Still works. And let's not forget Bubs' fantastic vocab as well. Like, I think there's 2 fantastic lines that stick to mind: the "ain't no rules" with dope fiends, and also the equivocating like a motherfucker. I don't think you can do much better than that for an epigraph.
Yeah, the things about no rules for dope fiends certainly comes along later as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
It's I think one of the I think it's one of them. They get, when they have to go and get customers for them when they first set up Hamsterdam. It's like, don't have any customers, so they go and grab them. And he says to Johnny says to one of the cops when he gets grabbed up, "I have to actually cop first before you can grab me."
Yeah.
And the cop says, "Is that supposed to be is that some sort of rule?" And of course, again, there ain't no rules for dope fiends.
Yeah, that's certainly. I know what you mean. It's certainly a different aspect of the rules, but yeah, it's a nice marrying up of the sentiments, definitely. So yeah, that's cool. I think that's kind of the first and last scenes in the episode as well, as we do like things being bookended. But yeah, overall a really nice opening scene, and
yeah, definitely
kind of a bit of a
return to season 1 as well. We haven't seen that many schemes since season 1.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it feels like it at the time, but this is kind of the closure of their relationship as well. Bubbles comes to a realization that he has to leave. So, yeah, let us move on. We're done with Bubbles. Let's move on to some politics. So things are going to get heavy now. So, Councilman Tommy Carcetti mentions a story in the paper to Tony Gray. A state's witness has been murdered in a high-profile case. Carcetti believes that something should be done, as the killing sends a clear message that the system in Baltimore is not working. He tells Gray he will try to fix it, politics aside, but Gray remains skeptical.
So this is showing a bit more of that desensitization to to what's going on. I mean, obviously Tony Gray representing that idleness towards what is, the killing of a state's witness. It's meant to be pretty serious. And at this point, we can feel that Carcetti is trying to make a difference. He's trying to go for that more honest route, even though it does end up corrupting him a little bit by the end.
Yeah, even since the first episode, he's really changed his tune, and it's a lot more city focused now. That the ego is certainly heading out, and it does feel genuine. And it is kind of, Tony Gray is very much playing the politics and playing what he believes Carcetti to be thinking. Very nonplussed, I guess, in general, and surprised with his attempt to be shocked by the witness being clipped, even sarcastically calling him the superhero, as he promises to go and get his cape on and save the day.
Yeah.
So
we've already seen Gray try to make a little bit of a move based on what Carcetti's doing when he has that word to him when they're playing squash. And then he decides to push it a little bit more with Borellum rules, and Carcetti actually ends up having to be the one to pull him back a bit.
Yeah.
And saying, you can fuck with them, but you have to go the right way about it.
I'm still going to be mayor at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is good.
We can see Carcetti still being a little bit territorial. His intentions are no doubt good, especially at this stage, but ultimately it's the level of control that he's really looking for. It's not he wants those decisions to be made, it's that he wants to be the one that's made those decisions.
Yeah, he has to get credit for what he's trying to change, otherwise that there's no cause for him to be the mayor. And he's really putting those things into action at the moment. And we can now hear what happens on his first attempt to raise the witness angle to the current administration. So Carcetti takes the issue to Mayor Clarence Royce and his Chief of Staff Coleman Parker. Royce promises Carcetti that he will act quickly. Carcetti asks to be kept in the loop. Later, Carcetti discusses the meeting over a squash game with Gray. He tells Gray that he is going to go after Royce if he keeps ducking them. So we have kind of already covered some of this. Obviously, we didn't talk about the scene where Royce says he'll light the fire. He keeps using that phrase, "I'll light a fire," and it's a sentiment that is quickly lost once Royce speaks louder than his actions. He's not going to do anything about this, and Carcetti seems to see straight through him as he shakes his hand and shows him the door. So it's a tricky situation for him, really, and we see very quickly in the squash game that Carcetti becomes very frustrated with this, and is now going to have to go and hassle the lower levels, the subordinates, to light the fire himself, I guess, really.
In the mayor's office, there's two conversations going on, really. There's the one that we hear, there's one that's going on between Carcetti and Royce, but then there's that sort of unwritten one where we can see that Royce is saying all of these things, but he doesn't really believe it, and like you say, his expression at the end says it all. He seems kind of surprised that Carcetti would come at him in this way at all. It's almost as if that level of honesty and desire to do good is so alien at that level of politics that it's laughable.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just, again, it's just demonstrating how dysfunctional the whole system is, and that Royce is not really there to actually make this kind of morally positive change purely for that reason. He's not going to do it on the whims of some councilman, because it's all about the levels, it's all about the game, it's all about where the players are and what level each person is, and he considers himself on top and Carcetti to be some kind of bottom feeder, and thus it's a shake your hand, yes, of course I'll do that, and don't call us, we'll call you kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what Carcetti was wanting to achieve by doing this, but, he really needed to speak in front of the press about this to, light any sort of fire. And it was probably just a way of laying the foundations, and at least making it seem to Royce that he had some noble intentions from the start. But later on, we do see him go back to his committee and bash Burrell for it. So that's where it really matters.
Yeah, it gives him a chance to see whether or not Royce is going to duck him again, because he knows that if he does, he can just use it for ammunition. It's just a case of being able to say that I brought this to him and he did nothing, and it's... Although, like I say, the intentions are good, he wants to get something good done, but ultimately the fact that it doesn't get done is also a bonus to him. In a way, he kind of must want that to happen. He must want Royce not to do anything, because it just gives him an even greater onus to lay into him when it comes to the the old election battle.
Yep, definitely. There's something nice about Carcetti having to go to middle management to actually light the fire by going to speak to Rules and Burrell about this rather than the actual mayor. And it marries up quite nicely with Colvin having to go and speak to middle management to light a fire about Hamsterdam as well. Although with him it was speaking to the low levels that didn't get him anywhere. So that was a nice little bit of symmetry. And it was cool to see Tony Gray beat Carcetti. It's a common theme in the show that when characters play games of sports, kind of their current success in the show is mirrored by their sporting prowess. And I know this is particularly true of Burrell and golf. But I like to think that the basketball in Season 1 reflects the situation in the ghetto too, with the police investigation clawing onto Avon. So, good to see.
Yes, that Prop Joe has that winning formula.
Absolutely. And he cannot be beaten.
So, yeah, that leads on to, I assume it must lead on to the actual committee meeting itself.
Yes. Okay, so at his next committee meeting with Acting Commissioner Burrell and Deputy Commissioner Rules, Carcetti questions them about the dead witness. Rules tells them they have a homicide task force and narcotics officer working the case, as well as turning to the FBI and DEA for support. Gray criticises the effort as too little too late, asking why witnesses are not offered any protection. And here comes Gray stealing the limelight. And Gray clearly hasn't, as you mentioned earlier, he hasn't joined the dots between the apparent genuine concern for a witness that he's befuddled by and an actual run at, the administration becoming a mayor. Clearly, it's not because Gray's stupid, but clearly because it's an inconceivable notion at this point that Carcetti could get anywhere near the mayor's chair. And it's going to take a little while longer before even his closest friends cotton onto it.
It feels like a case of monkey see, monkey do, doesn't it? Like Gray, I mean, he even says, doesn't he? He's like, what got into you? You did, Gray has kind of seen Carcetti making a move, so he thinks, oh, I guess I should do something about this as well.
Yeah,
he does, but he just doesn't go the right way about it, and he doesn't have there's no foundation, he's not building on something here, he's just suddenly attacking them. And from a purely moralistic standpoint, it's a perfectly valid point. But in the game that they're playing and in politics, Carcetti is smart enough to make him back down. Otherwise, it puts him in a difficult position as well, because they'll know that originally he's the one that took it to the mayor. So it's actually reached the point where you can see already that despite Carcetti's intentions, he's also being very clever, and he's got everything a little bit planned out in his mind. He knows when to take a soft touch, when to play hard, when to bring the press in, for example. So yeah, a little bit of scheming on Carcetti's part here.
Definitely. And I don't remember if we get to see the conversation they have after this, but clearly Carcetti's got some explaining to do if he wants them to lay off everything he's been fighting for. I don't believe it's until the end of Season 3 that Gray eventually finds out that Carcetti's running for mayor, when he eventually makes that kind of winning speech about the city, and it's the problems that the city faces. So we'll have to see in the next episode. That's something that I can't quite remember.
Is that everything?
That's
politics,
all for politics. Fairly brief this week. Homicide was also pretty brief, so we'll just go over that. Bunk canvasses for witnesses in the shooting of Tosha and Tank. He gets confirmation that Omar was present from a witness named Bruiser. However, Sergeant Landsman catches up with Bunk, working on the murder case when he is supposed to be looking for Dozeman's weapon, and prevents him from bringing in Bruiser for a statement. Landsman has requests from some arrested drug dealers to exchange information about the weapon for leniency. When Bunk interviews them, he finds nothing but time wasters and chancers. Poor.
And how good a moment is this with Landsman, where he turns up and he's like, "Excuse me, officer, is this Northern Pulaski?" Like,
Yeah.
It's just one of those classic Landsman moments. Well, and he's outside the office as well. This has got to be one of the very few. If he's not at like the bar or at the homicide office, he's kind of never really present. They're the only two places you ever seem to see Landsman. And on this one, he's actually out on the street.
It was fun to see him out of the office. Let's not forget that he did lead the investigation on Kima's shooting in Season 1. I believe he was getting his sleeves up and his arms dirty. As they followed the footprints around the train tracks and stuff.
That's true.
you are right that beyond that, this is such a rare moment, and the way he turns up in his Crown Vic, and you can hear the hooting from a mile off, and you're like, hang on a minute, that's not going to be Omar, is it? That's too easy. Oh no, it's Landsman. What the fuck? And he knows where he is. Like, he's in the most random street corner in the ghetto, and he just pops up out of nowhere.
Hey, he's a good detective, I guess. He's really shown that he's got a bit of ability.
There we go. Well, he's got the skills when he needs them. But he's clearly got a lot of free time on his hands if he can come and drive down to bloody wherever this is, not Northern Pulaski, to tell him.
He took a short break from his fast food and pornographic magazines.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure they're still waiting for him in the glove box once he heads off again. But, poor old Bunk, really, I guess. And he only, is only coming to tell him to stop chasing the Tosha murder and get back to the gun. And another case where the police work is prejudged. This random guy, Bruiser, is not going to have any idea about Landsman's gun, Northern Pulaski.
Yeah, the guy seems barely lucid.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem like a particularly... witness statements are notoriously unreliable as they are, so...
It becomes pretty clear that they're talking about different Omars as well, doesn't it? Although I think he denies the scar on his face, or does he not? Quite possibly.
Well, it's either that, or he sees the same Omar and he knows who Omar is, but being that he's... he's quite... I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too literally, at face value, if you excuse the pun, but he kind of has a very squinty eyes, doesn't he? So it seems like he probably doesn't see all that well. So even though he knows who Omar is and probably is able to recognise him at a glance, he's not able to distinguish things like whether or not he has a scar or anything like that. So it just highlights the fact that although he may know who Omar is, it doesn't make him a reliable witness.
He's a legend more than a person, isn't he, for most of the street, so...
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense.
He do?
Yeah. Although he was a witness in Tosha's murder, right? And I think Bunk asks him whose side was Tosha on, and the guy says he couldn't tell, they weren't doing slow motion. Which is...
Yeah, that's right.
So I felt like a bit of a nice comment on the natural depiction of that fight, and the erratic shakiness and lack of structure, and people firing everywhere.
Yeah. And you also mentioned the bit where Bunk goes to actually interview the arrested drug dealers, and like you said, they all just turned out to be complete dead end. And they don't seem to have any clue what it's all about. I mean, one of them is actually like, does it have to be a particular type of gun? Because if it's guns you want, I can get you guns.
Yeah. And people that, are willing to trade 3 dropped murder charges for a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, this shit.
How many murders are we talking here?
Although you get the sense that, Colonel Forster at this rate may well be willing to take that deal. So
he's a very shaky guy. I feel like he would just be like, yeah, fine, yeah.
Just do it.
Gotta let them know who we are.
Real desperation. So yeah, that kind of a dead end by design. This strand, the homicide strand, nothing too interesting. Just poor old Bunk. So should we move on to a meaty section? Western District. So we've got 5 Western District chapters. Let's start off with Bunny and his subordinates. Bunny's subordinates offering him sympathy for the failure of his initiative to get drug trade off the streets using tolerance zones. Colvin rejects Carver's plan to create a flex squad and put more pressure on the dealers, writing it off as more of the same.
Colvin obviously calls them a bunch of liars, because I think there is a sense that maybe his subordinates are somewhat relieved that his plan didn't work, because it was convoluted and it wasn't clear exactly how to make it work. And it allows them to go back to, like Carver suggests, these flex squads about just putting more pressure on, because that's what they understand. That's what they're used to. So there is a sense that they're quite relieved, and that their sympathy is sort of faux sympathy in order to help him feel better. But obviously Colvin knows better than that. So yeah, it's we see a slight creep into standard territory, and that, for example, Carver, although he does feel like a bit of a protege of Colvin, he's still very much in that old style of thinking, and that we just need to go in and bash more heads than we did last time, and then somehow everyone will stop selling drugs. Yeah.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. It's I think Colvin's most disappointed in not just the lack of ideas, but the idea that it's behind them. Colvin's still very much in the thinking mode, and he's just starting off his tolerance zones. But even his second in command, Dennis Mello, like he says, if it worked, it would have had a good effect on the community. He's talking about Hamsterdam in the past tense, like it's over. What we really want to do, I mean, we're giving you ideas here, but they're under the pretense of going back to what we know and love. And that, easy policing that you mentioned, Carver was bringing up, the Flex Squad, modified.
What we should try
Yeah.
is all of the things that we tried before our new idea that didn't work and were the reason why we had to come up with a new idea.
Exactly. But better.
Yeah, but better. Better how
Yeah.
is not clear, but better, apparently. More in some
Yeah.
way. Excess.
And, I'm sure all of them know that it's not better, but, if your motivation is to keep your work easy and stick with what you know and not be too challenged, then you can understand why these guys are fighting for that. So yeah, that's a short little conversation, and this leads into the Comstat meeting with Rawls and Burrell, who this time are laying into the auto theft unit, and they're chastising them for operating during the day when most cars are stolen at night. Rawls quizzes Colonel Forster about Officer Dozeman's missing service weapon. Following the Comstat meeting, Colvin comes up with a new plan. Instead of contacting the low-level hoppers, he needs to coerce the dealers and crew chiefs into following his new rules. He asks Carver for a list of names of all the mid-level dealers on his corners. Carver is unable to offer anything, and Colvin is once more disappointed in him. Colvin is forced to go to Major George Smith, who is the CID Narcotics Unit commander, who has replaced Colonel Forster. He finds Smith's records, a disappointingly slim collection of rap sheets. Smith tells him there is no one looking at high-end drug cases because Rawls is directing their efforts to street work. Colvin is also unable to find anything from the intelligence division, adding more to his disappointment. Eventually, Colvin is referred to the major case unit, where Lieutenant Daniels and Kima Greggs and Lester Freeman are able to give him a wealth of information. Colvin is glad and surprised that a unit as small as theirs is the only group of police in the department who have every file that he is looking for. McNulty arrives and receives a warm greeting from Colvin, his old commander, who still calls him Bushy Top. So,
Yeah, Bushy Top.
This is Colvin's kind of story as he gradually searches for this info about the mid-level dealers. But I guess the first bit is, of course, the Comstat, yet another grilling session from Rawls and Burrell, and we see that once more it's damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. We sense that since murders have calmed down in the east side, they're having to find a new headline, so to speak, to bash their subordinates on. And it feels like it goes on like this. They keep the pressure high, they take it in turns to bash the officers so they're not overly demoralised. But, they take a very simplistic view on the strategy. Just because they're, working in the day doesn't necessarily mean they haven't got their grip on the police work. They're just taking a very simplistic, judgmental view on what they're putting into work. So
yeah, it's a nice touch that they're, like you say, because it's so simplistic, it somewhat dehumanises it, and that goes nicely with the auto theft unit lieutenant's response at the end, where it's very robotic. He's literally just like, I now understand that prevention is the ultimate way through, or whatever he says. Like, it's very kind of like robotic and taking that simplistic sort of canned responses that he knows the commanders are looking for.
yeah,
It takes that human element out of the whole thing about having an opinion and being able to stand up and make suggestions like that. Whereas with Rawls and Burrell, it's just this rule by coercion, and you do what they say. So
yeah, you got to
whether or not it works is neither here nor there. It's whether or not you can get the stats that are looking for.
Exactly, yeah. And you're right that it even expands to the responses. Everything is measured. Everything is kind of quantified. Everything needs to rely on computer-generated data, as Rawls says. And you can understand why they try and keep it quantitative. There's no way to really measure long-term creative police work that the major cases unit are doing. There's far fewer ways, therefore, of being accountable for what you do. And relying on data in some ways keeps things more transparent, assuming it's all not duped. So it does perhaps miss the benefit of that long-term police work, but you can understand why the department needs to rely on this kind of data-based way of doing policing.
Yeah, so you can see how something, like you say, that's so practical has been bastardized and just taken on for a completely different cause, the wrong cause. And that accuracy and that the coldness of that computer-generated data, it's that coldness that's being focused on. It's about the fact that it is very matter-of-fact and very presentable and easily quantifiable, and this is lower than that, so lower equals better, It doesn't matter about whether or not how, about the ends justifying the means, it doesn't matter how it's got that way and what the consequences are and whether or not it's improved policing. It's just a very empty, very shallow means of policing.
Yeah, definitely. And it really stands out when you think about quantitative jobs with the police, because the police do deal with some quite horrific things, like murder is a day-to-day thing, and it's just that the quantifying of these acts that makes it such a more it really hits home. So yeah, and a great Comstat scene, and we see that the pressure's being taken off the East, and now it's gone on to someone else, and it keeps on going round in circles. And it was nice to see Forster really kind of stooping down in terms of his superiority. Rules really just kind of dismissing him at this point. And Colvin had to go and see his replacement, which was rather telling and perhaps was indicative of Dozeman's weapon, a very important police task that he was put in charge of and is not going anywhere. And Forster's really sort of sliding down the ranks. He was one of the big wigs back in season 1, back when he was in charge of both narcotics and homicide. I believe he was the CID chief, so he was way above rules.
Well, he's supposedly been part of the narcotics unit, or been part of the police at least, for like nearly 40 years or so, isn't it? It was like 37, 39 years, something like that.
Yeah, something. Yeah.
So I guess after all this time, and what with his age and everything, and probably caring less and less and working less and less, he's just been slowly phased out.
Yeah, and I mean, let's not forget it's going to be his wake next season. So he is being phased out. Yeah, and then the end of that Comstat is kind of Mello's unintended moment of genius, where we have Mello make a passing comment about speak to the right people, shit rolls downhill. Which was a nice way to plant the idea in Bunny's head. It needed to come from something off the cuff and on the spur of the moment. But it did feel a little bit on point, I think, to pass off as a convincing passing comment. But it was a fairly well executed scene.
Helped along by Colvin's fecal gravity.
Fecal gravity?
Yeah, that's what he says, isn't it?
Oh, I see. Yeah. He made up his own metaphor for the old shit rolling.
Yeah, he talks about fecal gravity, and that's what prompts Mello to talk about talking to the right people. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So it's nice to see him then go and find that information, and we see Carver has nothing to provide, which feels like he's setting up his redemption even more strongly from that point onwards, as he sees the disappointment on Colvin's face.
Yeah.
And I'm just reminded of how Colvin really is going through a lot of pain here. We're pretty much halfway through the season, and Hamsterdam still hasn't got itself set up yet. I'm just reminded of how much of a slow burn a lot of the show is, and it's very much like the docs in season 2. Things took a while to get kicking off.
And then we end with Colvin arriving at the major case unit, who actually do have the information that he's looking for, despite the fact that there's very few of them, and they're the ones doing the quote-unquote actual police work. So they have, a wealth of information to provide. They got all these dealers.
Yeah.
And they know they understand the structure of the street, they understand the structure of the organisation, and who is at what level, and that gives Colvin all the names that he needs to start rounding them up, but not before he has a little bit of a reunion with McNulty, which is rather heartwarming, especially when you see Daniels' reaction to it all.
Yeah, definitely. It makes a lot of sense that he was under Colvin in his patrol days that he references, like Colvin being that veteran of the police force. He's the guy who's been there, not as long as Forster perhaps, but he's been through his fair share of recruits and
he's coming up to his 30s, isn't he?
So it's nice to see that bled through. And Colvin really singing McNulty's praises. Feels like McNulty has just as many people singing his issues, but it is nice to be reminded of the great things McNulty can do in the show and in the police department, and Daniels is reminded of them here too, as you mentioned, which is nice to see. Yeah, so it's nice that the Daniels is intrigued by what Colvin wants to do with that data, and he's like, he just uses the comstat as a noun for more of the same. Like, I'm gonna throw some comstat at them. Just do my stats. So.
And then the bushy top comment, which I'm not sure if does it ever come back.
No, it certainly makes sense. You can kind of imagine the initiation days for McNulty on the force, and just kind of having to go through all the relevant mockery before he makes a name for himself on the force. It kind of gives me an idea of a nice past for McNulty.
Be like an origin story.
Yeah, definitely. A bit better than the. Have you seen like the Little Wire prequels, the shorts?
No, I don't think so.
There's 3. There's one where McNulty meets Bunk 2 years before the events of season 1, just as he comes out of being a kind of street cop and into a detective role. I think there's also one for Prop Joe back when he was in the 60s at school, and he was like being the Randy of the day, and making propositions to all the teachers and school kids in his class. And then we also had one for Omar back in the 60s when he was a little kid as well at school. His one's a bit gimmicky, but it certainly tries to show you a younger version of Omar. So I feel like...
I'm not sure why I haven't seen them before. Were they like part of like the special features on one of the DVDs?
They were definitely one of the season's special DVD features, yeah.
Because I'm sure I've watched all the special features. Maybe I have watched them, I just
You might have seen them. They're not that memorable, to be honest. But it's kind of nice that they exist, and I feel like McNulty and Patrol would have been a nice one. Bit of a bushy top origin story, as you say. Okay, so with this new intelligence, Colvin calls a meeting of his district and orders them to bring in the drug lieutenants using their cars instead of wagons. Carver questions why Colvin feels he will have more success with these dealers, having failed to persuade the street dealers. Colvin tells them he can sympathise with their position as middle management. Carver and Herc are tasked with bringing in Marlowe. They find him surrounded by soldiers and refusing to move. Herc is unfazed, but Carver realises the danger they are in. Greggs observes the DEU detectives' actions from a vacant apartment. Carver calls Herc off, and as they leave, Greggs photographs Marlowe. Meanwhile, Officer Colicchio has picked up Bodie. So here's the roundup. And everyone comes easy apart from Marlowe, as you might expect.
Yeah, you really get a sense in that scene of just how dangerous a position they're in, especially, I mean, as a first-time viewer, I guess less so, but when you really understand the character of Marlowe, you really realise just how thin the ice they're treading on there when Herc is facing up to him like that. There's a feeling that anything could kick off at any moment. So definitely a good idea that they left when they did.
Yeah, definitely. And
Marlowe is not the kind of person that likes to be slighted in that manner.
Yeah, he's the only man on the street ruthless enough to get violent with the cops, or so it looks like. Kima really sees Vernon's description shine through here from her vacant spawn of the devil, as Vernon puts it.
It's actually one of those rare Wire moments where it doesn't really offer much of a sort of established explanation or conversation as to how someone gets into a position. Like, Kima is just kind of there. She just kind of happens to be watching them. It's not clear if she's arranged beforehand to meet them there, or that she happened to go there, or why she would go there. Like, it's quite an unusual sort of sudden appearance by Kima in this bit.
I don't know. I like to think that with her newfound understanding of Marlowe's importance on the street, since Bubbles talked about the license plate and he has the best shit on the street, I feel like she would have found that truck and just kind of spent her days tailing Marlowe. And we kind of see that later on as well, because she manages to catch the Stringer Marlowe encounter, not at all by chance, but just because, she is committing to that tailing, the day-by-day tailing, that physical thrill of the police work that she loves. So I think in that sense, this can certainly be justified. And
yeah, it's certainly not unreasonable
Yeah.
that she should be there. I guess it's normally, especially when it comes to the anyone involved in their major case unit or the detail, there's normally some kind of established point where you understand where they're going to be or what they're going to be doing or why they're going to appear somewhere.
yeah, it's
So I guess when she's suddenly there, it's a bit like, oh, she's watching them. Okay,
definitely, yeah.
like it's not unreasonable why she should be there, but it feels a little unplanned, which is unusual because, like I say, there's normally something that's been established beforehand to let you know that they're going to be in a particular place.
It's nice how Kima, devoting herself to this Marlowe stalking is, it really does explain who she is, and it feels like her and McNulty have kind of gone off in different paths a little bit. McNulty's really gone off on a Stringer obsession hype, and Kima's kind of kept it on the streets with what she knows, with who's running the towers, who's got the best package, and then the rest of the detailer, under the guise of following Kintel Williamson, are also following Stringer but on the paper trail. So it's nice to see they're all doing that. Essentially working together but doing their own thing. So
Yep.
yeah, and I guess we see Colvin then delivering his speech to the middle management once they're scooped up. So we'll just have the final Western District bit. So with the lieutenants assembled, Colvin delivers his speech explaining the new regime. Bodie and the others are skeptical, fearing a trap, and Colvin tries to reassure them. Bodie asks what happens if they refuse to comply, and Colvin warns them that he will come down hard on them. As the meeting ends, Colvin spots a lone resident in his prospective tolerance zone. Hurt, Carver and Colicchio staff the Hamsterdam tolerance zone at the top of Vincent Street, and a few crews of drug dealers arrive. One of the crews complain that there are no customers. Carver observes this as a real concern. Herc objects to rounding up drug addicts for the dealers, and Carver pulls rank on him. Herc and Colicchio pick up Johnny and hand him over to Officer Santangelo for transport to Hamsterdam. Johnny cannot understand the situation when he arrives. So a great set of scenes here. And a nice bookend for Johnny, as we were talking about earlier, when there's just complete bewilderment as he steps out at the end of the line into this kind of new, reformed world.
Yeah, it does feel like a bit of a brave new world, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I quite like Colvin's speech, although you can't help but feel like when he talks about coming down hard on him, he uses that analogy of the carrot and the stick. You don't feel like it's particularly genuine about the stick because, Colvin, or we've already established that Colvin doesn't really believe in the stick, as it were. He doesn't really have any means to use that, and I think if it were the case that they were to buck, he'd probably just give up on it or try and find some other way to make that particular idea work. So, but in this context, I guess he feels like that is what they will understand. That threat of greater difficulty for their business is something that they'll be able to understand. As he doesn't really have much of an answer otherwise.
No, not at all. And I guess we're lucky that the mid-level dealers haven't seen The Wire. They don't know what Colvin's all about. To them, he's just another police, and they probably don't see the chief of police much. He doesn't spend time on patrol. He may well be a real hard ass. So I guess he has the benefit of that behind him. And they really do listen. And it's telling that Bodie is the one lieutenant who is willing to challenge the authority. Like, he does ask him questions. What happens if we don't comply? Goes straight to see Stringer as well immediately after to let him know before any sort of crazy stuff happens.
That smart ass Paul.
Yeah, he's really, really going up in the world and making all the right decisions. Being a model middle management.
Yeah. And Mello seems very unapologetic about the fact that when Colvin is like, I thought he said these goddamn houses were vacant. Like Mello
Mister.
kind of seems it takes it as a bit of a joke,
Yeah.
doesn't he? He doesn't seem to take it all very seriously. Mister.
Yeah, it's true. He's, he should have really made Mello go and do the sweet talking, but I guess I get the sense Colvin would do a better job. And I forgot we don't actually get to see that, do we, until next episode? But there is certainly a scene where he tries to make that lady move out to some sort of retirement home or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's still more obstacles in the way of Amsterdam. It's still not quite set up just yet.
But a lot closer than we were last week.
Yeah, and we are seeing the very early stages of it here, right at the end of the episode. And some of the middle managers, not all of them, have bought into Colvin's promise. The Barksdales certainly haven't yet. The Stringer hasn't given them the go-ahead. But I think... is it Justin that turns up? It's a really familiar dealer who turns up at the start and says there's no one around to buy. Who I think he's one of Marlowe's crews. And I like how Carver does see it as a very genuine oversight of Colvin, that there was just no consideration of where the demand would come from. And it makes sense that to begin with they're going to have to drag it over themselves and break the rules of the street yet again. So it's nice and obvious that Johnny would be the fiend they grab and dump them in. And humorous to see the drug rules turned so thoroughly on their head, especially with Santangelo repping the WMD as the bomb. I thought that was a nice chuckle moment. And yeah, just as we might expect, taking some time to build some trust with the police that Hamsterdam isn't a trap and it's actually a legit, chance at reform for both sides of the law.
And you see that in that position of greater security, where they don't need to worry so much about hiding it all from the police or whatever, they get quite competitive and start. It's almost like it's like some open market or something, where they're flagging people down, trying to get them to buy their product. And
yeah, it encourages innovation and it makes it easier for anyone to get involved and undercut anyone else. Like it's positive for the business, positive for the murders. So at this stage, it looks like a real success.
But then later on, you start to see more problems arrive, especially when there's so many people gathered in one place, and when all of those people are either drug dealers or drug addicts. There's no ignoring the fact that is a very problematic scenario. It's not just sort of everyday people getting together in some market. You're talking about addictive drugs being sold, and the money from those drugs being used in generally quite questionable circumstances. Yeah,
definitely. That's one of the great things about the season, really, is that there's no shying away from those bad elements, and they are just as bad, if not worse, than the positives, to be honest. And the show, in that sense, doesn't really want to preach. It wants to just present the reality, and there's no finer example of it than Hamsterdam, really, as we'll see later on. Okay, so that's what happens in the Western District. Let's move on to another meaty section with the Barksdales.
Right up.
Yeah, so Cutty no longer has his own section. He is a Barksdale member, and he is awoken by Meemore, which is, for those wondering, that's his grandmother's name. She asks why he's not working today. He lies to her, saying that he has a job at a bar and will now be working nights. She also tells him that Grace called to remind him of his appointment with the deacon. Cutty returns to work, checking on the drug dealer Slim Charles. Checking on the drug dealer that they're chasing, sorry. Slim Charles suspects that he's stealing from them. He's accompanied by Gerard and Sapper. They find the dealer with his girlfriend, whom Cutty believes is the most likely outlet for his stolen money. But Cutty leaves to go and have his meet with the deacon. The deacon questions Cutty's commitment and tells him that he will have to work himself to find a job, but that he can get help from him to get into a GED program. Cutty tells the deacon that this was not what he expected and then leaves the church.
So we're starting off with Cutty waking up, and we see that
hangover.
And not sort of the aftermath, I guess, from his partying, and that his grandmother may be old, but she's not stupid. She clearly knows what's been going on there.
Yeah.
So when she asks him why he's not working today, we can see that she doesn't fully believe exactly what's going on.
She's keeping it quiet, but yeah, there's definitely some judgment going down. And he forgot his appointment with Grace, and he really is torn up about that. It's like he got another hangover on the spot, really. I love the way his face creases up. But he's not disappointed that he forgot. He's disappointed that he will have to write it off now that he's in the Barksdale crew. Something that he just completely forgot about. Like his other chance at getting better, possibly with Grace on his side as well, is now torn apart because he's committed to the Barksdale organisation again. So
obviously still slightly hung up on it, because when he ends up going to see the deacon, he leaves pretty much because she's not there.
Yeah, he only goes on the condition that she might make an appearance, yeah. And has
obviously not interested in going into a GED program.
Definitely, yeah. Has to be pretty blunt with the deacon and just say, this ain't what I was expecting. And I think Cutty's, he seems fairly world weary and understands that with his criminal record, whatever GED program he gets, it's going to be tricky for him to really climb out into something that he'll enjoy, or it'll certainly take a very long time.
Yeah.
He's already been to a number of job centres and they've all turned him away fairly dismissively.
Yeah, wanting to make a change when you've got 14 years in prison for murder on your back is pretty difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
You've got a lot of people to convince.
Yeah, definitely. And it was nice to see Cutty looking up at that spire, though. It was like before he went in and had his dreams crushed, there was some sense of aspiration that he was kind of looking forward. And it's just a deacon and a GED program. Didn't quite go. Although pretty awesome stained glass window. I did appreciate that. That was nice. But he was talking about like working in a warehouse back in 1986. Like that's just so old. Even back in when this season came out, that's a long time ago. And it really ages Cutty. I mean, Cutty looks pretty young still, actually. But I guess on the street, life expectancy is a different matter, isn't it? Really. That would have been.
He doesn't mention his landscaping work.
No, yeah, that is true. I guess warehousing holds a little bit more claret, perhaps. Yeah. So that was a pretty good bunch of scenes.
Yeah.
So next,
I guess. Are we moving on to where he's with Gerard and Sapper?
Precisely, yeah. So when Cutty returns to the car, Gerard and Sapper are taking cocaine. Cutty worries about having to give a urine sample the following day. Sapper tells him that they have it covered. Later, Sapper and Gerard take Cutty to an old man who sells clean urine taken from a daycare centre. Cutty buys a bottle and takes it to the parole office where he is required to give a urine sample. Back out on the street, Sapper and Gerard try to talk to the stealing dealer's girlfriend. She gives them nothing but mouth until Cutty steps in and slaps her. Cutty then tells her that she needs to talk. When they catch up to the dealer, Gerard and Sapper severely beat him. Cutty interrupts them, telling them that if they keep beating him, there'll be no way to make him work off what he owes. Gerard then pulls out a baseball bat as the injured dealer tries to crawl away and hits the dealer a final time, knocking him out. And they finally loot him. They loot his unconscious body. So, pretty brutal. This is like the closest the show gets to what I'd call a gratuitous Game of Thrones violent scene.
Yeah, it's very heavy, that's for sure.
Definitely, yeah. And
it's nice to see, especially when you start off when Cutty returns to the car and they're just there, you get a real sense of extremes with Cutty, Gerard and Sapper, this old and the new. And it kind of feels like in a way that Cutty is almost babysitting, like you really get a sense of how childish the other two are in relation to him.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Just that contrast between the old and new never seems to die in these scenes. There's never going to be a proper adjustment, we sense.
And more so when he ends up going, I think we mentioned it last episode, where he goes up to give her a great big slap, much to the surprise of pretty much everyone around them.
Yeah.
And that Cutty is obviously quite old school in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first time that Cutty's old school behaviour shocks the new school, instead of vice versa. So it's normally Cutty kind of being bewildered and struck down, but this was an unusual one, and certainly was it certainly cut deep on that street. And I quite enjoyed the pea pot scenes as well. I love these little insights that we get into the industries and oddities that are required by kind of the ways of the street. And the pea pot is a great addition. It makes a lot of sense in that world. I love the guy ain't budging. He's an enterprising man. You try finding clean piss in Baltimore, he says.
You don't find that guy a little bit creepy?
Well,
getting him at
daycare certainly.
I don't want to know how he gets that. How does he go about getting them? Like, I don't even particularly want to know.
Yeah, it's not worth thinking about, is it really? But it
seems like a pretty creepy guy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, there's a cool little scene, and it was very telling to see Cutty go to the centre, and that there is no interest. People on the phone more concerned about their own interests. This is a good way of showing how Cutty and others are able to get away with the faux piss that they put into the pot. There is no attempt at enforcing the system here. And we see that people being consumed by their own interests is the reason for pretty much everything that happens wrong in the show. But it's well linked up with other things in this episode. The lack of data being gathered by the organisations in charge of the streets, such as the CID department, didn't have any data on the mid-level dealers. It's all a charade of an actual impact, and same with the mayor, who bumps off Carcetti's plea with "let's light a fire," thinking about his political risk rather than the actual problem. It's all that these are all things that are killing off the efficiency of the system. So it's nice to see that again in a slightly more smaller scale sense in the piss office, as I call it. So.
Yeah, we don't see a whole lot from that side of things as a post-release and the parole office and everything. We don't see a whole lot of that, but like you say, in this small snapshot, we see that they're dealing with a lot of people coming through their doors. They don't really care enough. They don't have the time. They're obviously overworked and understaffed to some extent. And that lady on the phone, she's just handing out, telling people to grab a pot and go to the room next door. It's not exactly policed. There's no... Carcetti sort of takes a glance around the room as if to expect to see a camera or something. But there's just nothing there. He's just free to do whatever he
wants. Pour it
wants.
straight in, yeah. So easy peasy. Okay, so... alright, next chapter.
Yeah.
Alright, so Stringer Bell chairs a meeting of high-level drug dealers in a hotel conference room. Also in attendance are Prop Joe, Kintel Williamson, and Fat Face Rick, representing the Veronica Avenue dealers. Afterwards, he finds Shamrock taking minutes and quickly reminds him that no matter how organised they are still participating in a criminal conspiracy. Later, he picks up the newly paroled Avon with a gift of new clothes. Yeah, so
getting a bit of first bit of that co-op.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time it's recognised as the co-op. I think that co-op sign refers to another convention that happened at that hotel, and it seems to be that the Prop Joe takes the name of that and applies it to their kind of group. It's certainly, it's a very logical name for them. It says what it does in the tin.
I suppose with Stringer owning a printing business, he can afford to print out a lot of signs and legitimate-looking bits to make it to seem like perfectly reasonable meet-up of businessmen or whatever they need to make it look like.
Yeah, of course, and I'm sure Prop Joe gets him to pull a lot of the publicly available police documents that he likes to read.
Yeah.
So it's all a big co-op, and that they're all in together, and a very kind of nice scene. We see that practically the whole city is barreling together to make money as one big monopolizing unit, and it's such a positive change. Like all of this is being taken so well and so clearly understood by all the city's big drug barons, and gives us real faith for some real reform here. And if we marry it up with the Hamsterdam that's about to occur, it's about to become even more lucrative for everyone involved. So it really...
We can also see this scene in terms of in relation to the Comstat meeting, and the fact that it's all very collegial, to use the term from season 5.
Yeah.
It's all very civilized, and they're handling it right like Republicans and shit.
Yeah, with the Robert rules, so that they're keeping it very measured and on point and quantitative and speaking in numbers. Yeah, definitely.
Whereas in the Comstat meeting, it's still about those numbers and dealing with those stats, but there's a much more hostile, combative environment, and not a sense that everyone is on the same side and acting in a collaborative interest.
Yes,
or at least if they are, it feels like for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone is united here by a motivation for money, and obviously, as policing is a public service, there's a real difference there with what there's a conflicting goal. Should we be trying to make money? Should we be trying to help the community? Should we be trying to make an impression that we're helping the community? And it's much harder to see kind of everyone banding together on that.
Yeah, so much more inelastic political gains that they're dealing with, rather than like you say, with the pure business sense from Stringer, it's just about how much money can we make and do it in the simplest way as possible without being interfered with by the police.
Yeah. And, you know, that motivation is pure. If they were to take sides and become violent, the money they make will go down. So it's in everyone's interest, and everyone understands that, to stay friends and to keep making money. And it's just a really positive business. It's nice to see how the co-op has really expanded into this great kind of organisation. And apparently...
And then... Sorry,
and apparently Kintel Williamson is in there as well. I didn't notice which one he was, but, you know...
Yeah, he makes a very brief appearance. The dreadlocked fellow.
Okay, I'll have to go and check him out.
And then there's got to be what is one of the most amusing scenes, especially in this season, maybe in the whole show, where we have Shamrock taking minutes. It's like, are you taking notes on a criminal fucking conspiracy? It's you know, the rules say we've got to take minutes.
Yeah,
know.
That's the great thing about these, you know, the co-op meetings. They don't have to adhere to bureaucracy. In fact, it slows them down if they try and start taking minutes and the rest of it. Like, it's all a very fluid operation, and as we see with these guys, trying to apply these criminal ideals to, like, these really corporate, bland kind of...
ultimately law-abiding.
Yeah, ultimately law-abiding kind of principles just always ends up being very funny. Particularly with, as we saw, Poot as well, you know, with the punk-ass bitches.
Yeah, great set of scenes, and more to come from the co-op.
Yeah.
Where are we headed next?
So, I guess we...
Avon. Yeah, that reminds me, we didn't mention Avon.
Didn't mention
right.
Avon, yeah.
I was going to say that Avon's release from prison, it's very underplayed, I think. Just kind of suddenly he's out. We've seen a little bit of his parole hearings, but it's not really emphasised, despite the fact that obviously he's a really important character, especially in season 1 and 2. Like, he just kind of suddenly he's out. It's not really with much fanfare that he leaves prison.
Yeah, there's no big hullabaloo. Yeah, I mean, he certainly marks his path back to the prison, doesn't he? As he drives away, he throws his prison clothes out on that path, almost leaving a treasure trail for him to come straight back in a few episodes' time. And it's quite scary to see Shamrock presenting Avon his clothes fresh out of the box, almost as if on a platter, on like a silver platter. There's a real kind of worship element to Avon that Stringer doesn't have at all.
Yeah, like he's his butler or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Avon really plays into that role. He really appreciates being treated like that. And even, you know, this is the first time he's meeting Shamrock, I assume, because they've hired him since Avon went into prison. And Shamrock really is kind of on edge here, meeting his boss for the first time.
Yeah. So obviously heard an awful lot.
Yep.
He's acting as a result.
We also saw a little bit of Stringer, as I mentioned last time, having his chat with a fellow student as he leaves university or the college. Which, you know, I think McNulty sees that from a distance, but as I was saying before, I'd love to see the content of these conversations that he has out of his professional mode, just like discussing like a group report they have to write or something. That'd just be so cool to kind of see the other side of Stringer, and you know the dramatic irony in these guys not knowing who Stringer is. They're just kind of classmates to one another. So it's nice to see that.
Yeah, I can't imagine Stringer having a very light conversation about, what did you see on TV last night, sort of thing. Yeah,
it would have to be though, wouldn't it, really? That's the way college works. I'm not sure I can tell you what I got up to last night. Okay. So, Bodhi reports his meeting with... Hang on a minute. Where did we get to?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Is
I think
that right?
The next bit is Bodhi reporting to Stringer. Yeah.
So Bodhi reports his meeting with Major Colvin to Stringer. Stringer first chastises Bodhi for going around the proper channels of reaching him, but Bodhi says he was worried that only Stringer would consider the proposition. He tells Stringer that he was picked up with other Barksdale lieutenants, including Tucky and Little Mikey. Stringer assumes that Bodhi is wearing a wire until he shows him otherwise. Bodhi reminds Stringer of his problems with Marlowe.
So Bodhi, again, I think we said before, like, he's smart enough to take this straight to Stringer and knows that going through the quote-unquote proper channels is not all that efficient, again, being a bit flexible with the rules, just as Stringer was being flexible with the Robert rules of order.
Yep. And, of course, giving the other side of the tracks a nice chance to disobey the chain of command.
Yeah. And middle management getting a chance to shine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the key word this episode, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And I love how Stringer is cooped up at the Museum of Industry. Nice way of keeping those docs involved, even if it's just as a memory.
I was going to say, we do get a bit of a reminder of the docks, don't we? Where we see a couple of shots of various rusting maritime elements, which gives us a bit of a don't forget season 2 happened kind of moment.
And it's not. I mean, we haven't reached this quite yet, but Stringer later on, I believe he refers to the granary condominiums that they've converted from the grain pier as part of Andy Krawczyk's development that we saw the start of in season 2. So Stringer is actively working against the docking community with his gentrification and his developer, business plan. So it was nice to see that he's kind of coming down and he's one of the active participants against, in surviving the Museum of Industry. But yeah, it was a good location for it, but it also made sense from a plot perspective as they need somewhere out of town and unsuspecting of the police to meet like this.
Bodhi doesn't quite have to go the whole way and take his trousers off to show that he's not wearing a wire.
Yeah. Yeah, not quite. There's enough trust for that. Yeah.
So yeah, that's about it. That's about it for that scene. Just Bodhi doing his part, skipping a few levels, going straight to Stringer.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So the final Barksdale strand. So after meeting with Marlowe and failing to reach any compromise, Stringer attends Avon's welcome home party. Avon is greeted by Slim Charles, Country, and Brianna. Prop Joe is also in attendance. Avon is left on the outside as Stringer talks business. Stringer pulls Avon away to talk business with Maurice Levy, Clay Davis, and Andy Krawczyk, their developer. Avon spots Gerard and Sapper coming into the party high and orders Slim Charles to throw them out. Stringer once more pulls Avon away to show him his new apartment. Stringer tells him that they have enough legitimate money to put whatever they like out on in the open and in their own names. Stringer leaves Avon asking once more about women. He returns soon afterwards with the girl Avon had noticed at the party and another. So this is where the hullabaloo, the song and dance about Avon coming home does occur.
Yeah, they leave it there for this bit instead.
Right at the end, yeah. And it's nice to see it. It's a big moment for the show as he comes home. But
it's hard to tell whether when Avon is talking with Levy and Clay Davis and Andy Krawczyk, it's difficult to tell whether he's just uninterested in the business or whether he's just horny. It's kind of hard to tell which one is more predominant in that situation.
Yeah.
It's probably a little bit of both, I would have thought.
I think Avon Wood Harris is like fantastically subtle at this moment in the show. Like both that being pleased and really begrudging of where Stringer is taking the business, and perhaps more urgently all the cock blocking going on, as he always seems to remove him from that girl at the most opportune moment. Almost on purpose, really. So that's a nice little running gag throughout this scene. But you are right that kind of look of disinterest when he chats to the three big financial wigs and the lawyer.
Not really his people.
Yeah, I mean, Levy's helped them out of a few tight spots, but he doesn't want them to become like their, development lawyer. Like that's just taking things, missing the point of the street, really, for him, isn't it? And there's clearly going to be some grudges really kind of being held here as he sees what Stringer has done in the flesh.
I guess there's this sense for Avon that it's difficult to have reputation on the street if you're not on the street, and Stringer is very much trying to climb the ladder to somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. And once you put your money into enough, legit business investments, then you're no longer, an illegit gangster. You are becoming more and more just as Stringer wants to be legit, and you're losing that profile, and it's just not what Avon's about at all. So I
suppose Avon maybe doesn't really
wouldn't really know what to do as much. I mean, he kind of lives that gangster lifestyle so much to the full that if he were to become totally legit, he would kind of lose a certain part of who he is.
Yeah, definitely. I think,
and that he wouldn't be able to function like Stringer and have some legitimate business and pretend to be a manager or whatever. It's just not within him to do that.
And that's explained very well, I think, in the final scene where he's shown that apartment. Like, for all intents and purposes, it's the dream apartment that everyone aspires towards, and you can tell Avon's impressed with it and is really excited by the fact that this is his now. But equally, it's not really what he wanted his role to amount to, and you can get a sense that he feels like he doesn't want to have shot this far beyond the street. And the way he plays that kind of that conflict is really, really nicely done in these final scenes here.
Especially having shot to that point without having done it himself.
Yeah, that's true. It's not his to claim, is it?
It's like Stringer's just come along and handed it to him. Obviously not really his style.
And I believe this flat is the apartment, as the Americans say, is the where they come for their balcony chat.
Yeah, it's a scene, we see this place a couple more times.
Yeah. So that's a real scene that's kind of brewing up. So this scene perhaps acts as a nice allusion to the later on, particularly as everything's red and green as well in that apartment. And I know later on they have a chat about how Avon sees red, Stringer sees green. There's just this kind of conflict of interest that they're not going to be able to resolve, and it's all nicely set up in that room for them as he comes out of prison.
Despite that happening later on, they're meeting there and they're coming together and feeling a lot better about Avon being out of prison and the progress that Stringer's made, although, like you say, there is a bit of conflict and a bit of resentment. It all feels very genuine. It doesn't feel too strained. It's not like later on where you can really sense that bubbling pressure, although it has been building a little bit. In this scene in particular, it does still feel very genuine, and they try to capture a little bit more of the fact that they are still very close friends at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And they have a nostalgic chat about their childhood as well here.
Yeah. That helps.
Definitely, yeah. And, I mean, they'll have more of them later when they are at loggerheads. Not that those chats become any less genuine then, but they become more and more impeded by this conflict of interest that they have. So it's nice to see all of these things gradually brewing. And as you say, at this point, nothing's too serious yet. It's just kind of the stage one.
And then Avon gets his final welcome home present and gets what he's been waiting for, that whole party, and gets not one but two women to keep him company.
That's
for the night.
a great setup by Stringer there, and lovely to see Avon's spirit suddenly lift. And that makes 2 episodes that finish. The final scene is someone getting laid after a long stretch in prison. This is quite a specific theme for a scene to have, I guess, but good things come to those who wait, I guess.
Doors being shut.
Yeah, that's true. And then
certainly a Stringer's thing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true, actually, yeah.
Getting doors shut.
It all comes back to Stringer. And I guess when Avon arrives at the party, immediately he meets up with Brianna and Prop Joe. And, the first thing on people's mind is D'Angelo. I think Avon says to Brianna, "We just wish I weren't the only one coming home." And we see that D'Angelo really still has his arc running. McNulty's keeping it alive. Dee and the rest of the Barksdales are keeping it alive. And, it's a ghost that hangs over this season.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Slim Charles is there as well, looking cool. Flitting from party to party since we saw him last.
Gets to chuck Gerard and Sapper
Yeah,
out.
Gerard and Sapper, as you mentioned, the kids of Barksdale, really, or at least representing the new age kind of mindless Barksdale, getting kicked out. They're high on their coke. Standards have slipped while Stringer's been focusing on business. So I guess that's kind of an indication to Avon of things he needs to tighten up on. And yeah, it's good to see them there. I think earlier on, actually, that they are just such children, aren't they? Because we did see them beating up that guy.
Yeah.
Where for them, you know, they were living for the pain that they can dish out. And Cutty holds on to some of that empathy. So we're kind of cutting back scenes here for some reason. But it's good to see Gerard and Sapper there.
Yeah, Cutty again bringing a bit more of that old school, a bit more having a little bit of respect, despite all the violence and the illegality of it all. There's a sort of the equivalent of honour amongst thieves, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely.
And that if you're going to beat him up to some extent, then he's not actually going to be able to work again, and thus he's not going to be able to put it right in monetary terms.
Exactly, yeah. I mean,
and Cutty is aware of that, whereas Gerard and Sapper, they only care about the pain they can inflict, and that's what makes it worth it to them.
Yeah, for these guys, death is the payment, not the money that he owes. They kind of enjoy it enough that they place that on a higher value. So,
bitch, gotta pay. That's
exactly,
it.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all they need to say.
Definitely, yeah. So it almost feels like they're becoming the Herc and Carver of the reformed criminal game. The knuckleheads who love the thrill of the physical aspects of it and don't tend to think, you know, hard ahead like a stringer would want them to.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that must bring us onto our stuff with the major case unit then.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so major case unit. So Greggs meets with Bubbles and he tells her more about Marlowe Stanfield's organisation. He names Chris Partlow as Marlowe's chief bodyguard. Cheryl calls, but Greggs does not answer. Bubbles gives Greggs a disposable cell phone known as a burner that was used by Stanfield dealer Fruit. Jimmy continues to follow Stringer, tailing him from his college class to a meeting at his underdevelopment apartment building. Eventually he gets tired of following Stringer and approaches him in the photocopying shop. Stringer gives McNulty his card and brazenly offers him a condominium in his development. McNulty tells Stringer that he is disappointed as he has high hopes for their continuing game of cat and mouse.
Yes, I really like what Bubbles says to Greggs here when they're talking about. He's talking about Chris Partlow. He says part like in your hair and low like a low end dope fiend. Which I thought was a nice little quote.
That's what Partlow is named after.
Yeah.
Yeah. A central parting dope fiend.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice that I think that's the first mention that Chris gets. Obviously, for a first-time viewer, his name means nothing. His first appearance also means nothing, as we'll see later on. He is introduced incredibly subtly, just kind of guarding one of Marlowe's meats.
It's got to be one of the very few times that Marlowe uses his name as well.
What, as in Chris? Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he call him Chris quite a lot?
They're not usually that informal about it, or they don't even use each other's names.
I think.
I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
I
I'm
feel like he
remembering
says
it wrong,
Chris
but
a
I don't
lot in
tend
season
to...
4. Maybe not. We'll have to hold that thought and see if we can.
I don't know, something about it when he said it. It just kind of felt like it doesn't usually address him by name so much.
Was it Chris Go Tool Up or something like that? Wasn't it? It was. Yeah.
Tell our people to tool
I mean,
up.
he's definitely not known as Partlow, is he? He's not one of those guys who's known by their surname. He is just kind of Chris.
But normally they sort of aren't direct with their use of names. They're kind of talking to them or they're not talking to them, and there's no need to sort of address them by their name in order to make it clear that they're addressing them.
Yeah. I mean, Partlow is such an important role in the Stanfield organisation that he doesn't need any introduction, definitely. But yeah, I mean, he's introduced incredibly nonchalantly through a pair of binoculars, nonetheless. And unannounced, wearing one of his signature and too smart for the street shirts, which is nice. Always got the top button done up and looking very nicely furnished, I guess. But he does feel different again, though. I mean, it's a bit like with Marlowe. We can't really put our fingers on it, but there's something about his character that feels unrefined at this stage. Like, they haven't really found him. I mean, he's wearing too light colour. I mean, he always wears really dark colours later on, and he's just got this kind of bright yellow shirt on that doesn't scream Chris at all.
And I guess, what we end up is with Do we are we including the meeting in this?
Yeah, we have kind of descended over to Chris, haven't we? Because we don't really see him until the meeting. But if we just focus on Chris for now, I guess, and then move on to the meeting. So,
and then we also had the bit where Jimmy goes to the actual copy shop itself and sees Stringer, and we get that little moment because they haven't really seen each other. Have McNulty and Stringer really interacted at all since they happened to meet at the court scene way back in the very first episode?
No, well, McNulty met Stringer when he arrested Avon at Orlando's club, and
but they haven't really interacted.
Yeah.
In that same level.
I think he turned up to Bird's trial in season 2. I think both of them may have turned up to that. But beyond that, there's been no interaction. This is the first time they've ever shared a proper conversation, I think, beyond quipping at each other. So
yeah. Other than sharing a nicely done every now and then.
Yeah, you have a nice day. All that pleasantry stuff. So it was a really good scene to see that. And we see the guy back in season 1, like Stringer's copy guy, his shop guy who he decides to take over from. And he gives McNulty what looks like a very basically formatted business card in Times New Roman font. And he's even slimy enough to sell him a condo right down by the harbour.
Certainly to try to, yeah.
Yeah.
And it just digs in a little bit more at McNulty, who is really hoping to get a bit of dirt out of him, but instead, as he complains to Freeman and Greggs later on, he just tried to sell him a condo. He wasn't really giving anything up, playing the perfect legitimate businessman.
Yeah.
He's got the facade all worked out now. He just feels very much out of reach.
And it feels like McNulty's disappointment here mirrors up with Fruit's last episode. It's kind of the other side of the track, so it's a number of scenes where characters comment on their lack of enthusiasm for reform or a change in the way the game works. I had fucking hopes for us chasing each other.
Yeah, I liked it the way it was. Why did it have to? Why did it have to change?
I think it's no mistake that those two epigraphs come in succession. Certainly. Yeah, I mean, just quickly going back to that Bubs chat with Kima, I guess. Nice to see Bubs being so enterprising. I don't think there's one time where he gets paid by the cops and doesn't push for a little more and always gets it. Always in a very endearing way, never in a pushy or kind of annoying way. He always seems to tug at their heartstrings in just the right way. He's a very, very enterprising chap. And also now starting up a bank with Kima as well, with very kind of concrete plans to go into enterprise and set up his own t-shirt business. So he's already got his post-Johnny game in the works, which is good.
Yeah, he knows where he's going. This is, like I say, the start of his slow rise, and using what he knows. He's using what he knows. He's not trying to become part of this the other world, his other side of the tracks. He's not trying to become something that he's not. He's using the knowledge that he has, which is of the street and of the drug game, and to use that to make a little bit of money.
Yep. Okay. All right. So next chapter, when McNulty returns to the office, Freeman tells him that he has a week to look into Stringer and asks if he has anything. McNulty tells Prez and Freeman that Stringer has become the bank, working legitimate businesses to produce funds to buy packages of narcotics for distribution that he will never touch. McNulty asks about progress in the Kintel Williamson case and learns that they have DNRs and some payphones. McNulty spends time with his sons Michael and Sean and asks about Elena's new boyfriend. They remind him about an open evening for a new school.
Right, so yeah, we kind of already mentioned a bit with Freeman and Prez and about him becoming the bank, and obviously Freeman gives a little explanation of that, which feels like it's somewhat for the audience as well. So yeah, that's kind of pretty standard there. Obviously not very far with the Kintel Williamson case, and Freeman very, feels a little dejected when he's just like, oh, just some DNRs on payphones. Like that's pretty much it, really.
Yeah,
it's become a standard fare for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and then we get a little bit of domestics with McNulty and his sons. He just it's starting to seem a little more and more with each scene that comes with McNulty and his kids. He starts to seem a little bit more and more out of place. Just kind of suddenly turns up and starts lying on their beds, and is very quickly sort of hushed or moved out of the room.
Yeah, there's now things that his kids aren't able to tell him on instructions from mum. Like, we can't chat about
and
Dennis.
Clearly, they're going to listen to their mother.
Yeah. The mother is really taking over as the authority figure, and that stability that McNulty is searching for, as we've discussed before, is just getting more and more out of grasp, and it's a tricky one. But he is determined to make it right, so he's going to come and see her at the open night. We will get onto that shortly.
And aren't they playing Halo?
Yes,
Halo gets quite a lot of plugs in The Wire, doesn't it? There's so many incidences where when people play games, they're playing Halo. In fact, almost every incident that I can think of.
Yeah.
Like the two guys in the stash house that Omar goes to rob, where it goes badly, they're playing Halo. Later on, we see Naymond plays Halo.
On the 360 as well.
On the 360. Yeah. So clearly, HBO and the showrunners, whatever, they sort of cut some deal with Bungie or Microsoft Game Studios just to be like, we will get all of our characters to play Halo if you give us some money.
Yeah, but they always put the Halo logo in the screen, don't they?
It's not very subtle.
It's clearly some sort of contractual obligation that they had to kind of advertise the product accordingly. So, yeah,
it's like with Kima early on when Cheryl calls and she flips her phone open. There's a nice little advert for Sprint.
Yeah, it's that sort of thing. I guess you could always argue that it was like a demo version, and some demos had like some sort of watermark, didn't they, or something like that? But
yeah, I don't know.
I doubt they'd be going down that route.
So yeah, just even The Wire is not above product placement. Just does it a little more subtly. That's all.
Yeah. I think product placement is good, particularly if you want to create a world that feels authentic and real. You do need brands that you recognise to make sure that that's the case.
Not only that, but it's, despite any grievances that you have with it, at the end of the day, making TV shows and films and all that sort of stuff, it's expensive, and as well as providing a bit of real world connection to what is otherwise a completely fictional universe, it just enables the very production of these shows. So as long as it's done tastefully and it doesn't feel like an advert, then it's difficult to complain, really.
Definitely, yeah. So.
Also, I like spotting product placement. I like catching them out. But I see that. I see what you're. I see what you're.
See what you're trying to do to me there. When it's in my face, yeah. Yeah, I think McDonald's gets a fair whack on this show as well, doesn't it?
Dunkin' Donuts,
and I know whenever people drink beer, it tends to be Heineken. It always seems to be Heineken. And they always have the label facing the camera.
And Jameson, obviously.
Yep, a bit of Jameson. I think Guinness comes up every so often. So, yeah, it's quite a few all in all when you think about it.
Newports.
Yeah, very true.
Who doesn't want to smoke the same cigarettes as Omar?
We don't have the choice over here. Newports are very difficult to find. Okay, so, I mean, I guess the overall part of that section is that McNulty legitimately resigns himself to Kintel Williamson as a target. As they announce the end of the investigation on Stringer, he has now become the bank. As far as they're concerned, Freeman does, a nice bit of exposition dumping for Prez's benefit, and Stringer is off the cards. And it's kind of nice that, McNulty seems to have gotten it out of his system now. And he is resigning himself to Daniels' target as the next best option.
Yep. He's come around, realises that it might be a bit more trouble than it's worth, and that he's not going to catch him if he's going to be a legitimate conduit for all the money. So,
yeah,
might as well try and get his teeth into Kintel Williamson instead.
Definitely. That is, of course, until Kima manages to reveal that Stringer is a bit more linked to the street still than they might have thought. And this is the next chapter. So Greggs continues tracking down Marlowe, as we saw earlier, and she is using Bubbles' information and organises support to tail him. She finds Stringer visiting Marlowe at his headquarters and calls in more support. McNulty joins her later and asks what's going on. Inside, Stringer discusses the co-op and its potential usefulness to Marlowe, particularly in laundering his drug money. Marlowe remains silent throughout his speech, and when Stringer leaves, Marlowe tells Partlow to organise weapons for their people. McNulty is dubious of Greg's surveillance until Stringer emerges. Then he is suitably impressed even, not oppressed. Okay, so...
There's Stringer trying to talk a bit of sense into Marlowe, but I think we as the audience can tell already that it's not going to work. We've already seen already that Marlowe is not the kind of guy who likes to be told where to go, what to do. He doesn't really tend to take advice all that often. It's more about him telling others what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely.
And the history lesson from Stringer about all these old drug bosses who get caught because of the bodies or whatever, it doesn't seem to be particularly convincing. Marlowe is this new breed. He wants it all for himself. He doesn't see this idea of cooperating doesn't really make any sense to him. It's not about that. It's about who can become king. There can only be one king. There's no sort of court of kings or council of kings. There's only one, and he wants it to be himself. He wants it to be based around his name. He wants it to be based around his style. And I don't think there's anything that Stringer can say that's going to convince him here.
Not at all. Yep. There's no persuading him into the co-op, even though, as far as Stringer's concerned, yeah, it is the logical way. And he's quite patronising to Marlowe, really, isn't he? You making $1 million, right, where you got your corners. It's just kind of making those judgments about his business. And Marlowe, at this point, totally, seeing through him, seeing him as a lesser kingpin than he is. That ego is very clearly established right from the outset.
The desire to cooperate just makes him, to Marlowe, seem like a target. It makes him look weak.
Yeah.
He knows that because he feels that way, he's not going to be quite as militant about the whole thing, and thus it just makes him seem like a target, basically.
Mm. But I guess the good aspect of this though is that Marlowe's insistence on hounding the Barksdales has given Stringer a good reason to expose himself to the street here, and Kima is lucky enough to catch him with it and get McNulty all knotted up as well. And for Stringer here, it's definitely worth the risk. With the scale of the problem he's getting here, it's worth the risk that he himself faces the problem and tries to step in. And as we've just discussed, there really is no hope. Unfortunately, it wasn't worth the trip. But it certainly made Stringer understand the guy a lot more, to a much greater extent, and they can obviously change their strategy accordingly following the meeting. So,
yeah, especially seeing as with Marlowe, the last thing we're left on is him preparing for war.
Yeah.
So that tells you exactly where it's headed next.
As is the case with Marlowe, his character is very elusive in this stage of the show, and we're not given the luxury of seeing his response to Stringer. We just see Stringer's kind of proposition, and then we see the two of them walk out. So.
Yeah, it's strange. We get a bit of voyeurism in two instances. One immediately in the room itself, but that is very carefully controlled as to how much we see.
Yeah.
And then we get it from the point of view from where Greg's is.
Yeah, definitely. So it's an interestingly done scene from two perspectives, as you say, Kima and inside the house as well. And we get Kima, of course, a little victory sentiment. I like my piss in bottles. Just as a slightly too obvious way of calling back to Cutty. Yeah.
It is a nice little connection, I suppose, yeah.
Not too bad. Okay, so here's when McNulty goes to see his school open evening, so we've got a little McNulty moment. So he attends the school open evening, he arrives late and finds Elena talking class sizes. He gravitates to the buffet table where he finds Terry D'Agostino doing fundraising work. The two flirt and end up spending the night together. After they make love, Terry is dismissive of McNulty and rejects his further advances.
So almost immediately, McNulty is completely out of his depth. He's it only takes a few seconds for him to be like, right, fuck this, I'm no good here. I'm going to go and get a drink or something. He just doesn't even manage even a few sentences with the guy until he hates it. And then he only starts to feel comfortable when there is a woman that he wants to have sex with. And at which point, shortly after, he's given a bit of a taste of his own medicine. He's kind of, for once, he is the one that's being used for sex, and he seems very confused by the whole thing. He doesn't even know how to deal with it. Getting without even realising it, getting a bit of a taste.
Yep. Yeah, it is a little farcical, isn't it, the way it pans out, and he's just so incredibly obnoxious as soon as he turns up to this open house, and instantly becomes obviously bored with what the teachers are saying about the school, and really grates on Elena for that reason, and just, as you say, noses on straight over to the food, and clearly wants to stick Elena's nose in it, though. I think that's the intention. It's not really him just being bored, it's him wanting to take out some frustration on his wife and do all he can to embarrass her. And then, of course...
Yeah, it's not clear what he wants to achieve. I mean, if it's just that, it seems very very silly, doesn't it? It's not really... If he's trying to get something to do with his relationship here, it's certainly not going to work.
No. And then, of course, Elena has the Dennis at the ball game moment as she's distracted by his conversation with Terry from across the room. She's all of a sudden out of the school zone and in the I'm jealous of you zone. And his ability to recall details about his boys really does speak volumes. Like, I think my boy's in 8th grade or something. And, it's for him, it's about that stability, as we mentioned before, and it's not really about the people themselves, as painful as it is to hear. He doesn't really retain, the facts that he should know about them. So it's kind of a painful thing to hear as he tries to chat about his kids.
Yeah, he tries to make some kind of thing about how he's not sure about the maths program, but it doesn't come out as... I'm sure Terry can tell the same. Like, it doesn't come across as particularly good. Doesn't really know what he's talking about.
Just worried about all that math,
Is he ready for all that math?
Yeah. Oh, dear. And then, of course, Terry's, of course, linking up with Carcetti, and we see that politics world that she lives in is very demanding, and she can't really take much time off work, and as soon as they've had their fun, she's just back on the laptop and, sorting things out in DC where she's based. And
she really lives that ruthless political lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely.
Even in her sexual encounters.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that's one of her defining character traits as well. She always does have this kind of promiscuous edge, as we see with Carcetti later on as well. And it feels like it feeds in quite well with her intense politics. And McNulty's even made his match here that he's not going to be able to win over her long-term affections. Although I think they do keep on seeing each other for a while throughout this season. Okay, so final section, just a little bit of Omar, not much at all. Omar and his crew prepare weapons for their next heist. Tension is still high in the group following Dante's accidental shooting of Tosha. Dante is annoyed that he has been given a peripheral role and Kimmy is confrontational. Omar warns them that they must get along or leave the crew. So
this is following on a little bit from what happened before. We're finally getting a bit of a follow-up.
Yeah. And it is very kind of not nice to see Dante and Kimmy really still on different sides of the fence as to the way things went down in the fight, in the shootout back a couple of episodes ago. And Omar's the only one who can really take a mature perspective and just say, look, this is friendly fire, couldn't have been helped, no one's to blame, we're going to have to get over it and we're going to have to work together again. And it is a sad, quite depressing scene, and Omar's still in a really dark place at the moment.
Yeah, we're only really seeing snippets of him, though. There's not a whole lot of time being dedicated to him. Like you say, it is a very short bit, so mainly just being reminded that he's still about and that he's still working, but not really getting anything substantial other than these little snippets which are telling us that, like you say, he's in quite a dark place. He's clearly prepping for another bust.
Definitely, yeah. And it's nice to see that Omar's discipline with cleaning out the gun chambers, in stark contrast to the Barksdales. I think that was the only other thing to kind of glean from this segment. Otherwise, it was very straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think that concludes our recap for this week. Should we move into our final little segments?
Yeah, let's do it.
Say, where you living, man?
Where am I living?
Well, if you're thinking of coming downtown, I got some condos about to come on the line in 8 months. You say the word, I'm gonna hook you up something nice down there by the Hippodrome. Loft apartments. Real nice.
You disappoint me, String. I had such fucking hopes for us.
Have a nice day, officer.
I guess this episode, the main themes really were Stringer and Colvin's two reforming policies, Hamsterdam and the co-op, really getting to work together in tandem. They're both taking off at this point, and we see real, forward pushes within the story of the season, and it's reflected in the epigraphs and the dissatisfaction on both sides. The criminals don't want it more legit. The cops don't want it more legit. No one is there to chase them. So I thought that was just kind of the overall idea. This episode really was really pushing things forward with
middle management is a very common theme.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And in amongst those, there were some characters that stood out. I think it was a great Colvin episode. Stringer has a good episode as well. I think Avon is not in it much, but his scenes at the end, particularly his acting, are very, very well done, and he makes a very suitable return to form here.
Definitely has to be shout out for Prop Joe. He has some real moments of brilliance. I love his line at the scene with Avon's homecoming. I love his line about how prison is a place where a fat man could find his inner self.
Yeah, I
think that's fantastic.
He's so underused so far this season, but every time he pops on, just every comment is golden. That's what's so great about Prop Joe. Absolutely. You can't go without mentioning Prop Joe. I think McNulty has a little bit more to do than your average episode as well. So it's nice to see that going down, and Carcetti as well, making advances in the politics world and becoming more and more likable and someone we can get behind. I think those probably 5 or 6 stood out to me really as the main characters. Did you?
What about any particularly good scenes that you thought stood out for this episode?
I think the one I was most pleased with was actually the co-op scene. It's just really pleasing to see that reform is working properly over on the criminal side of things, and all these people banding together. And Stringer says, "Anyone have any objections to us making lots more money?" And there's just this sea of silence, and then you have a nice bit of Shamrock with his Robert Rules to lighten the mood as well. So I think that was a really nice scene. Nothing too eventful, but something that one of the few positive, really optimistic moments in The Wire.
Showing the actual bit of positive response to reform instead of all the negativity that we're getting with Colvin.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of other scenes, there weren't really any scenes that really stood out this episode.
It wasn't quite. There's a lot of scenes, and they're all kind of good, but there isn't anything that's quite as stand out as normal. I think the Avon's homecoming is pretty good, mainly because again we're seeing Avon out of prison and around a lot of characters that he's used to, and he's obviously acclimatizing to all of the successes that Stringer has had. But otherwise, I would agree. I think there isn't anything that's quite as stand out in terms of scenes in this episode.
Definitely. And that brings us on to our epigraph, which is I had such fucking hopes for us, McNulty. So, as we've discussed before, it's just very much a dissatisfaction with the notion of reform, and feeds in with the same sentiment as Fruit's epigraph from the previous episode, why you got to go and fuck with the programme. And I guess it feeds into all sorts of themes this episode and across season 3. So the idea, particularly with the politics, Tony Gray, Carcetti, and Royce, how they're pushing in different directions with regards to the witness that's been raised. Obviously, with Cutty, who's conflicted about his sense of reform and the way he fits into the world now. It's just a very much a standard reference to the idea of reform.
As well as obviously Stringer having such hopes for his co-op and wanting to get Marlowe involved. He probably thought that with someone as shrewd as that, he had a lot of hopes to get someone on board like that for the co-op, but no such luck.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
But it's not, it's not like the most sort of prolific epigraph in the whole show.
No, not at all. I mean, I'd much rather had you equivocating like a motherfucker, Bubbles. That would have satisfied me a little bit more, I think. But yeah, it does a good job.
Or handle that shit like Republicans.
Yeah.
Or handled it like Republicans and shit, I mean.
Kintel. Yeah, that would have gone down well. As far as the title goes, is that Straight and True?
Straight and true, yeah. There's obviously quite a lot of people trying to go straight and true in this episode. We got Cutty having to choose between the two lives, trying to go straight and trying to go back to being a soldier. He's obviously still quite conflicted there. We have Stringer obviously going, really kind of succeeding at going straight and true and really operating as the bank now. We have Carcetti trying to be straight with Royce and trying to be honest with him, trying to see if he's going to duck him another time. And then Bubbles trying to go straight, trying to start up his little business with the white T-shirts and everything. So yeah, a lot of characters trying to go straight, I guess, in this episode.
Yeah.
It ties in very nicely.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yeah, I guess that's about everything for episode 5.
Episode 5 sorted.
I guess at the end of next week we'll be halfway through the season.
No, at the end of this week we're at the halfway point now. This is 30 episodes in, so.
Oh,
yeah.
is it? Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say halfway through the
season. Sorry, yeah.
But halfway through halfway through the show as a whole.
At this point now, yeah.
So I don't know. It feels like it should be more of a celebration or something. I guess it's only appropriate for The Wire that it should be somewhat anticlimactic without fanfare.
It's another day in the office.
Yeah. So yeah, shit. Halfway through the entire show,
and it's taken us 9 months. Not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad
Not
at all.
too bad.
Considering.
Yeah. So I should be able to sort us out next week as well. I should be around for the next podcast, which will be released on the 5th of June, I believe. So.
Yes, that's right, 5th of June.
Yeah, so please look forward to that. That'll be episode 6, Homecoming, I believe it's called.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we start seeing a bit of... well, I won't talk too much about what happens in the episode. We'll deal with that then. But yeah, episode 6, Homecoming.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us. Can't believe we're halfway through the show. It's crazy. Join us again next week. Feel free to send us any emails as usual, caughtonthewire@gmail.com. Check out the website, check out the blog. We stuck that tautology video that we mentioned last week up on the page, so have a look at that. It's really interesting. Obviously a very, very common theme in terms of the writing in The Wire. So take a look at the website, caughtonthewire.wordpress.com, and we will see you next week for more.
See you then.
Take care.